This video is going to be my first look review at the 2018 Giant Trance. Now this is the aluminum model. I bought this bike specifically for my project of comparing a mid-price trail bike to a higher end one. So I currently own the 2017 Giant Trance Advanced. So that's a carbon frame, higher end components, carbon wheels. And I am going to be doing a project where I do a couple months of comparisons of these two bikes and talking about the differences, talking about what I think the value is of this bike versus a higher end one. But for this review, I'm simply going to do my first look overview, talk about the components, some things that I like about the bike. Before I get into the review, I do want to give a big thanks to Bike Works of Gainesville, who helps me get my hands on these bikes for these types of projects. It's a great shop to work with. If you're in the North Central Florida area, check them out. They're an authorized Giant dealer. So this bike retails for $2,825. I am almost blown away by the value of this bike. So when you're buying a bike, there is kind of a diminishing returns at one price point. In other words, you get more and more value for a bike as the price goes up. But you hit a certain point where those returns, the extra benefit you get, gets smaller the more money you spend. And this bike to me is the pinnacle of getting value for your money. I'm going to go over the components, some things that I really like about the bike. I have not gotten really any time riding this bike other than just around the driveway. Alright, we're moving this review indoors because the cicadas are so annoyingly loud outside right now. Alright, let's talk about some of the features of the bike. First of all, we'll start with the suspension. So the suspension is 150 millimeters of travel up front and 140 in the back. So very classic trail bike amount of travel. So the fork is a Fox Rhythm. It's a 34 millimeter stanchion fork, so a little bit thicker than the typical cross country, which is 32. And I'm curious to see how this compares to my Fox factory fork on my Trance Advance. So the factory is a fork that has a little bit more features, and it has the Kashima coating. I do like the coating of this. The black looks really good. Now you'll notice that if you watch my Project 275 Plus videos, this is almost the exact same color scheme of the Plus bike that I had, which I really like. I went with this color over the black. The black was too similar to my current Trance, and I just really like this kind of reddish orange color. The rear shock is a Fox DPS Evol, so it's extra volume, which is going to make the shock a little bit more linear, so it won't ramp up as quick. It'll make it a little bit more plush in the mid-stroke. As with most bikes today, this is a 1x system in the front. SLX components, it's got a 30-tooth front chain ring, and the back is an 1146. Now I used an 1146 on my trip to Pisgah recently where I rode my Trance, and it was really good gearing. I never really felt like I needed a lower gear, although I did use the 46 on some of the climbs, and I was glad it didn't have a 42. So pretty good gear range for this. Now what's neat about this is the cassette is actually an XT cassette. This is kind of a newer style rear derailleur, which I really like. It's pretty sharp looking. It does have the clutch so you can engage to make the cage stiffer to reduce chain slap. And speaking of chain slap, yes, my famous homemade chain stay protector I put on. It comes with a pretty nice one underneath. As you know me, I always put this one on top just for the extra protection. The bike does have the ability to mount a front derailleur should you ever choose to put one on, but I think that most riders will be happy with the 1x system. And of course, it's a narrow ride chain ring, so you don't need any kind of chain keeper. The chain will stay on. I don't think I really have ever dropped the chain on my current Trance that I've been riding, the Trance Advance. So the Shimano narrow wide, the 1x stuff works really well. This does come with a dropper seat post. It's Giant's brand. I've used several Giant dropper seat posts in the past. This one is a newer style and I really like it. It's very smooth. What's really interesting though is Giant chose to put a quick release seat post clamp on here. which I'm not really sure why, because you have a dropper seat post. It does make adjustments very easy if you wanted to do so, but typically once you have it set, you don't need to move it. You know, it's neither here nor there for me. I don't really mind it. Like I said, when I was setting up the bike, it did make it pretty easy to adjust the height of the seat post. So the lever actually has a really nice feel to it, and like I said, it's kind of a newer design. It's got some ridges down here on the bottom which make it really easy to feel and grip. You can put it in a nice position. I really like this position. Some of the older Giant ones you had to put kind of high and you had to lift your thumb up kind of high to get to it. This is placed really nicely and it's very smooth. And I'll show the return of the seat post. It's very smooth, so I'm going to push the lever all the way down. And it's not super slow, but you can make it slow if you want to. So if you just want to hold the lever down slightly, you could have it come up just a little bit if you wanted to, like that. And it's, like I said, it's a very smooth operating seat post. Just a tad bit of side-to-side play, but every dropper seat post I've ever used has that. So while we're looking at the saddle, it does have Giant's contact saddle, and this is actually a pretty nice saddle. It's got the anatomical cutout. I thought I was having issues with the one that came on my 2017 Trance, and it turned out after I replaced the saddle, it was actually the shorts that caused a little saddle sore. It was not the saddle. I used this saddle on the Plus bike that I had for a while, and I like it. This bike does come with boost spacing front and rear, so 110 millimeter wide axle in the front. And this one does not have the K-bolt that comes on some higher end Giant bikes. It does have a quick release, so the K-bolt is a little bit lighter, but you do have to use an Allen wrench to get it off a 6 millimeter. This has the quick release. And the back, of course, is boost spacing as well. It's got 148 millimeter wide axles, and it does come with an Allen wrench style, so you do not have a quick release on the back. You do have to use a 6 millimeter Allen wrench, and of course they're both through axle. The stem on this bike is a 50 millimeter length stem, which is a little bit shorter than previous years. My Trance Advance from last year came with a 60 millimeter stem, and Giant has shortened it up, which I think is a pretty good move. Also, Giant has widened the handlebar this year. So last year's handlebar was about 760 millimeters wide. This is 780, so that's another good move. So Giant is moving more towards modern trail bike cockpit. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I have not ridden this bike on the trail yet, just around the driveway. But shifting around the driveway, the SLX shifting is super smooth. It's not quite as positive as XT. In other words, you don't get quite a solid click like you do with XT, but it's still very good. I mean, most people really aren't going to notice much of a difference. I think SLX is a great value. It operates very smoothly. I've used it on other bikes. And the bike also comes with SLX brakes and also a 180 rotor, both front and rear. So again, this bike is spec'd to be a great all-around trail bike. I've saved my favorite feature of this bike for last, and that is the wheels and the tires. Giant has done something that I've been saying for years bike companies need to do, and that is put tubeless ready wheels on the middle end trail bikes. So most of the higher end trail bikes for the past few years have come with tubeless ready wheels and tires. Giant has made this bike tubeless ready. In fact, this bike didn't even come with tubes. Yes, this bike came with the valve stem and tubeless tape already installed, no tube. That seriously makes me so happy that out of the box, a mid-price trail bike is tubeless ready. Giant did include 3 2-ounce bottles of tire sealant and tire levers, so you can unseat the bead of the tire and pour in the sealant. So I ended up using 1 bottle per tire, which gave me 1 bottle left over. Now this bike also comes with really good tires. The Maxxis High Roller 2s, and they of course are tubeless ready. They have the EXO protection, so extra sidewall protection. And Giant did not skimp on the tires. These are tires that you would find on a higher end trail bike. And I've been riding the Knobby Nicks, Schwalbe Knobby Nicks on my trail bikes for the past few years. I've ridden high rollers in the past. I've had them on a Giant Rain. And I like these tires a lot. Pretty grippy side knobs. So a lot of good cornering and braking grip on these tires. And the other cool thing that Giant did is put 2.4s. So my bike last year had 2.35s in the front and a 2.25 in the back. Giant has boosted this up to come with 2.4s both front and rear. Now this bike does also fit 2.6 tires. So if you wanted to go a little bit bigger, you could even put on 2.6 tires. So it's got enough clearance in the back. This bike comes in just a hair over 30 pounds with the Shimano XT pedals and a water bottle cage. So that'll wrap it up for my first look at the 2018 Giant Trance. I think this is probably one of the best values that I've ever seen in a mountain bike. The SLX components are just so solid. They work just about as good as XT. The brakes work just as well. In my opinion, the shifting is not quite as positive. The clicks are not quite as positive as XT, but most riders, like I said, are really not going to notice that much of a difference. Tubeless wheels out of the box, doesn't even come with tubes. Improved cockpit, improved dropper seat post. A bike that comes with Fox suspension. Great bike right out of the box. It's one that I don't think a lot of riders are going to really need to upgrade. I'm really looking forward to getting this thing out on the trail and seeing how it rides. My only question is the aluminum wheels. I've been riding carbon wheels both cross country and trail for the past couple years, and I love carbon wheels, so I'm curious to see how stiff these aluminum wheels are. Now, as I said, my mid-price trail bike project has begun, where I'll be doing some head-to-head comparisons with this bike and my Carbon Trance from last year. And I'll be looking at things like wheels, frame, components, seeing how they ride. So stay tuned to my channel for that project. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Catch you in the next one.